Hey now Brawlers, today we're going to take a look at Shinobi WAT-AAH from Yellow Games. And yes, that is the proper pronunciation of the game. You must say it that way if you want to play it. It's right there in the rules. Okay, not really. But this is a card game where you're taking control of rival ninja clans. I actually don't know what you as the player are supposed to be, but you're trying to take control of these different clans by building sets of cards representing each of the different clans, like Clan of the Dragon, Clan of the Toad, Clan of the Spider, things like that. And if you're able to successfully get a high point value worth of clans, you're going to not only win the rounds, but there's a little twist to the game that, would you believe, actually involves worker placement in a weird sort of way. I should also mention at this point that this has God tier level artwork from my favorite artist, not just board game artist, but just probably my favorite artist of all time, Nayade. And I'm sorry I don't remember his real name off the top of my head, but he did the artwork for Seasons, which also gives him an extra boost in my book if you know anything about my love for Seasons. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and do a brief overview of the game. Then we're going to come back and I'll give you my final opinion. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of Shinobi WAT-AAH. The goal of this game is to accrue as many ninja clans as you can in order to score points via their strength. Whoever plays 4 clans out in front of them, 4 different clans, will trigger the end of the round or the game, as the case may be. Then you'll add up all your points. Whoever has the most is the winner. The thing is, there are 2 different game modes in Shinobi WAT-AAH. There is the Grasshopper mode, which is the basic game, which you just play in one sitting. And then there's Grandmaster mode, which is still the same as the Grasshopper mode, but you play 3 rounds of it, and there's some extra little bits in between each round. But we'll go ahead and cover the Grasshopper mode first to teach you how to play the game. Then we're going to go over the different stuff that comes in the Grandmaster mode. So, first thing you do, lay out the Shinobi deck. These are the main cards you're going to use during the course of the game that represents all the different clans of Shinobi, as well as the Ronin and Yokai that you can reinforce your clans with. Then each player is going to get either 8 or 7 cards. If they're the first player, they get 7. The rest of the players get 8. The first player also gets this Emperor token. And each player gets one of these colored Shinobi head tokens. There is no blue, which is very, very disappointing, Yellow. I'm very disappointed there's no blue. But anyways, you'll take one of those tokens, lay it out in front of you, along with if you're the first player, lay that out, and then the game begins. Now, each player's turn is broken down into 3 phases. The first phase is drawing, and this is a mandatory phase, but you have 2 different options on what to do. The first option is just to simply draw a card from the top of the deck. This is called recruiting. Very, very simple, no problem at all. But instead, you have the option of taking corruption. You have to declare that you're going to do the corruption action before you draw a card. Then you're going to draw the card and reveal it to every player. Now, whatever that card is, this is a typical clan card, which we'll get to in a moment, but they all have a strength rating up at the top. When you're taking the corruption action, you're going to take that strength rating and add 2, and that's how many cards that you get to draw. So if I have this Clan of the Bear card, I'm going to get to draw 8 cards. However, that card that you use for corruption goes face down underneath your Shinobi token. At the end of the round or the game, depending on what mode you're playing, that card is going to be worth negative points, whatever its strength value is, in this case -6, towards your total amount of points. So it's kind of a push your luck thing. Do you risk getting a ton of cards because there's no hand limit in the game, or do you just play it safe and take a normal draw, the recruit action? That's your option, but you must draw something. Now, the next phase is where you actually play the cards that you gained. And again, you have 2 different options on how to do this, but this entire phase is optional. You don't have to play cards if you don't want to, and sometimes you just can't. So what's going to happen is, first one you could do is the placement phase. This is where you're actually placing down your clans from your hand. Now, you must play a minimum of 2 clan cards down on the table, but you could do up to 4. That's the maximum amount of cards that a clan can have in it. So let's just take a look at the hand that I have here. I have some different options, but let's say I want to go ahead and do the Clan of the Fox, in which case I'll lay down every Fox card I have up to 4. In this case, I have 2. And then not only will this be points at the end of the game, so 8 points if they stay out there until the game ends, but I also get one of their special abilities. Now, most cards, except for that Clan of the Bear I showed you from the clans, is going to have a special ability that's keyed off depending on how many cards you played of that clan at once. So in this case, if I played 2 Fox cards, I get the 2-card ability, which says exchange 3 cards from your hand for 3 cards from an opponent's hand chosen by him. If I had played 3 or 4 of the Fox cards at the same time, I'd get the 3-card ability, which is exchange your entire hand for an opponent's hand. And this action, no matter what it is mandatory. If you fulfill that requirements for it, you must do the action. Another example, I happen to have 4 Spider Clan cards in my hand. I can play all 4 Spider cards and get their effect, which is destroy a clan. But if I'd only played 2, I'd only get to destroy 1 card. So I'd pick someone else's card they played out there, either destroy 1 card or destroy their entire clan, put them into the discard pile, which happens to be called Jikoku, which means hell in Japanese folklore, I think. Now, another option that you have are Ronin cards, and let me see if I can pull one out here, because unlike a real professional, I did not pull one out to show you ahead of time. But Ronin cards, like this, are basically wild cards. When you're doing the placement action, you can play this together with clan cards, and it counts as a member of that clan for kicking off the special abilities, and it's also worth a point as well, at the very least. However, a clan cannot be composed of strictly Ronin. You have to play it together with an actual clan card. I'll show you some of the other different clan abilities as well. You have the clan of the monkey, who gets to mimic copy the power of enemy clans. Either the 2 or the 3 power, depending on how many monkeys you played. You have the clan of the crow, which is going to let you pull cards out of Jigoku, the discard pile. I already mentioned the clan of the fox and the clan of the spider. You have the clan of the rat, who's going to let you force opponents to discard cards. You have the clan of the carp, who's going to let you draw cards, which can be very critical when you're trying to get some hand advantage going on. And I already showed you the clan of the bear, who doesn't have any special ability, but is worth the most points out of any of the clans. Oh, also, one last one, the clan of the dragon, who's going to let you basically scry for cards. You'll draw a bunch of cards off the top of the deck, choose the ones that you want, and discard the rest. So those are the different clans that are in the game. And during the placement action, you can place down those clans. You cannot place a clan that you already have down on the table. When someone puts down their 4th clan, that's the end of the round or the game, depending on which mode you're in. Now, there's one other type of card, and I happen to have a couple that was already in my original hand, and those are yokai cards. They don't look like the Ronin. They're like monstrous cards of all different types with these bamboo borders. Now, this leads into the second option that you have for placing cards, which is reinforcing a clan. If your clan, instead of taking the place a clan option, if you have a clan down on the table that is not full, that is, it has 3 or less cards, you have the option of reinforcing it. You can either put down more cards of the same clan, or you can't put down Ronin, but you also have the option of placing one of these yokai cards. Now, if you choose the yokai action, you can only place the yokai by itself. You can't play it with more of the same clan cards. But when you do, not only will you get these points at the end of the game, but you'll be able to use the yokai special ability. So, for instance, the Kitsune says, exchange your entire hand for an opponent's entire hand. This Oni here has no special ability, just scares you, but it is worth 8 points. Some other examples would be the Neizumi, who's going to let people discard 3 cards of your choice. And in case you didn't notice, each of the yokai is of a different animal spirit that's also got a similar ability to the clan that sort of corresponds with that animal. So you can always play a yokai on a clan that has 3 or less cards. When you choose to play more cards of the same clan, basically what you're doing is trying to add points to what you already have, but also, if you're able to play enough of that clan during reinforcement to trigger the ability, you'll get the ability again as well, but cards that you already have do not count. So for instance, if someone makes me destroy some cards and I end up with only 1 clan of the spider out there, I can reinforce on a future turn, but if I only play 1 more spider card, I don't get their 2-card ability. If I play 2 more spider cards to reinforce, though, I will get their 2-card ability, but the cards that are already out there do not count for that. So that's basically playing a card. You're either going to play them from your hand or reinforce. The last thing everyone does on their turn is discards a card. If you can, if you have even just 1 card in your hands remaining, you must discard it into Jigoku, and then play passes to the next player. Now, like I said, once someone has played their 4th different clan out on the table, the game is going to end. That player doesn't necessarily win. At that point, you're going to add up all the different strength values of all the clans that you've played, all the yokai and Ronin that you've played, minus whatever corruption cards you have at that point underneath your Shinobi token. Whoever has the most points is the winner. Now, the thing is, this can mean whether or not you're the winner of a round can mean different things depending on what gameplay mode that you're going to play. So that's basically Grasshopper mode. Let's go into the Grandmaster mode. Now, Grandmaster mode, actually, as far as gameplay goes, is the same as Grasshopper mode. It's the same basic gameplay. However, you're going to do that times 3. There's going to be 3 rounds of Grasshopper modes, essentially, And in between each of those rounds, you're going to have something a little bit different, and that's what all the board and cards, all these little tokens are for. So after the first round, you're going to figure out the points just as you normally would, and then the players are going to be ranked from 1 to 4, depending on the number of players that are in the game. Whoever has the most amount of points is going to get 4 of these little Ninja Star Shuriken tokens in their color. And whoever gets the second is going to get, again, it depends on the number of players, how many pawns that you get. So it'll be 4, 3, 2, or 1. Just know that it's best to have the highest ranking possible so that you get as many of these tokens. Also, whoever's first ranked will be the first player and get the Emperor token for the next round as well. After that first round, and in between all the other rounds, you also carry over whatever cards you have left in your hand. You don't redraw like you would at the start of the game. You just keep whatever you have, and the gameplay continues. But before you do all that, you have to deal with this. Now, there's a few different things going on here. First off, at the end of the round, whoever has the lowest rank, as sort of a compensation, gets to draw 2 cards from this shadow deck and can choose one of them and then put the other one on the bottom, and that's sort of their catch-up mechanic in order to compensate them for coming in last. These will stay up front, face up in front of the player for the next round and then be discarded at the end, but in the meantime they'll have a very powerful effect. So for instance, this card Necromancy says that they can draw cards from amongst the top 3 cards of the Jikoku, the discard pile, when they take the recruit action. This Dark Alliance card says that your yokai can be played as Ronins. In this case, their power does not apply. And just for one more example, Horde of the Shadow, at the end of the round, each card you have placed is worth 1 additional point of strength. Alternatively, you can choose to do the scouting action in order to look at one of these decoy cards here, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But after that, players who actually have pawns are going to go in turn order with a new turn order and place 1 or more of those pawns down on the board. Pawns don't carry over into the next round, so you have to use them all now. What these do, they can go on 3 different spots on the board, and these are going to be used for final victory points at the end of the game in some way, shape, or form. There's these little like Dragon Ball symbols here. Those are symbolizing final victory points. Now, if you could put one of your pawns here, and you can only put 1 pawn here for each round, you not only will get 10 points at the end of the game, but you get to draw one of these Imperial Court cards. This is the Imperial Court space. These cards work a little bit differently than the Shadow Court cards. You'll take a card, put it face down in front of you, and then at some point during the next round, you get to use its ability 1 time. So for instance, Protection of the Ancestors. Cancel an action targeting the cards in your hand. So if someone has like a nasty ability that destroys a clan or removes it, targeting cards in your hand, if someone has a nasty effect that would make you discard cards, you can prevent that. Here's another one. Tactical Retreat. During your turn, return one of your clans to your hands. Return an enemy clan to its owner's hand. So, these can be some very powerful effects just to help you along during the next round. Now, another spot you can put them on is the mission space, and this has 2 different effects. Again, if you put a pawn here, you're going to get 10 points at the end of the game for every pawn that you have. But also, every time you put an even-numbered pawn here, because these accumulate from round to round, you get to look at one of these face-down cards, which, again, I haven't gotten to yet, but I'm about to. The final space is the boss card space. There is a boss. There's 5 different boss cards in the game. When you're setting up the board for the first time, you're going to shuffle them all up, take 1 out without looking at it, place 3 of them down here as decoys, and then place the 1 actual true boss here in the center. Now, why this is important is because each boss has different scoring tendencies, meaning that when you have the option of putting as many pawns as you want and have access to on the boss card, but how the scoring is going to work for that at the end of the game is different for every boss. So, for example, the zombies say that if anyone has 0 pawns, then you get negative 30 points at the end of the game, but you don't actually gain points for having pawns on there. All you want to do is make sure you have at least 1 on there. Another example, the Grugazor is very good. You just want as many pawns as possible. So for 1 pawn, you get 30 points, 2 pawns, 60 points, and so on. The Gaijins, it says that you want to have at least 3 points or 3 pawns on there, because if you only have 0, 1, or 2, you get negative 30 points, and so on. So the thing is, though, you don't actually know this at the beginning of this round. You have to divine this information by looking at the decoys, and then by process of elimination, trying and finding out what this card is. Of course, there's 1 card that's still off out of the game, so you still have a 50-50 shot, but at least you have a better knowledge of what could be there. So those are the 3 spots. You can put as many as you want on the missions or the boss card, and 1 on the Imperial Court card every round. Once you've done that, goes back to the first player, and then you start the new rounds, which is like Grasshopper mode, playing your clans, so on and so forth. You're going to do that 3 times. At the end of the 3rd round, once you've done all of your pawn placement, you're going to flip over the boss card, figure out your final score. Your final score will be however many pawns you have on here, calculated by whatever the boss does for scoring. The number of pawns you have here, 10 for each pawn, and the number of pawns you have here, 10 for each pawn. Whoever has the most is the winner, and that's the main Grandmaster mode of Shinobi WAT-AAH. Now, I picked up Shinobi WAT-AAH on a whim based on purely superficial reasons. I really love the artwork. Again, I don't think there's any discussion about one of the games that Nayade is involved in that can't begin with talking about his artwork. It's just fantastic. It's like this blend of anime style with Western animation, but with a unique feel all of its own, with a great attention to detail. It's just fantastic art, and I wish I could recall off the top of my head his real name. But anyways, it's just great, and that drew me to it. But also the theme. I love the idea of the rival ninja clans being placed out and pitted against each other. That was a really cool concept, and I've got a good track record with yellow games. I mean, King of Tokyo and Steam Park, really great, simple but fun, and with some strategic elements games. And so I took a chance on Shinobi WAT-AAH, and I have to say I am pleasantly surprised. I really, really enjoyed my time with this game. It's not exactly what I was expecting, but still it's one that I can highly recommend. So let's break it down. Start with the components. I already talked about the awesome artwork. The design of the cards is also good as far as how everything's laid out. It's all very simple. I mean, the game itself, as we'll discuss, is not a very complex game by any means, and certainly the very simple layout of the rules and the text on the cards, that all helps that very, very much. There's not a lot of confusing iconography, things like that. It's all very simple in how it's laid out. The extra little bits like the board, that's all very high quality, but especially those little Ninja Star worker tokens that each of the little pawns that each of the players has. Those are really neat. I don't know, they're very small, but I like them a lot for some reason. It was a really nice touch to the game. So I can't complain about anything regarding any of the components. Even the box is that cool yellow size box like King of Tokyo. So if you have a lot of yellow games, they could stack together really nicely. Anyways, that's all pretty good. Now, the gameplay itself. There's 2 modes of play to the game, like I mentioned in the overview. You have the Grasshopper mode and the Grandmaster mode. What I would suggest to you is the first round of the game is essentially Grasshopper mode. Even in the first round of Grandmaster is Grasshopper mode. So when you're teaching the game, what I would say is teach just the Grasshopper mode, and at the end of that, just tell people, look, do your best, try to get as high amount of points as possibly can, and try to hold back some cards that you don't necessarily have to play. With that, once you finish the first round, if everyone had a good time, you can just roll right into the main game and then teach the rest of the rules for the main board with the worker placement of the Ninja Star pawns and all of that, because it rolls right into it. That's all you really need to know. If people don't like the game, you can stop right there. Because really, whether you're playing in just the normal mode by itself or playing all 3 rounds of a Grandmaster mode, the game is very simple, and you'll know right away whether you like it or not. This is set collection, and that can be something that's a little misleading about this game, and definitely a fault of it, is that while you have this beautiful artwork and you have this great idea of a theme with having these ninja clans, really the game is just sort of abstract set collection. You're building sets of different cards and using the effects of those cards to try to screw over your neighbors. And that could definitely be considered a fault of the game too. No one likes seeing their clan either whisked back to their hand, which actually isn't that bad because you get to use the ability again, but it does set you back. But even worse, no one likes seeing their entire clan destroyed, especially when they're on the cusp of victory. There are definitely heavy take that elements to this game, together with a gang up on the leader type aspect. Normally, I don't like these aspects in a game, but because the game is, number one, fast, each round is fast, and because you have the option of playing out the longer Grandmaster mode that takes place over 3 rounds and has some very, what I think are cool catch-up mechanics, I think that those take that elements and the gang up elements are very mitigated. To me, it wasn't as bad as it is in other games where you're just like, just throw up your hands, you're done. I mean, people have just stomped on you, and what are you going to do? I never really had that feeling in this game. There's always something I can do. It's just not as frustrating as other games. The corruption element is really cool. I like that idea. So you could just draw a card on your turn, and if you've got a good hand of cards and you know what you're doing for the next couple of turns, that's fine. Or you can take that gamble and do the corruption. And how much is it worth it to you? I mean, you don't have the option of choosing whether you're going to do it. Once you draw that card and you've made that decision, you've got it. And for me, the best thing that can happen is that you draw a card that's got a strength of 1, and then you draw 3 cards, which isn't a lot of cards, but you're only taking 1 corruption. Now, if you draw a card that has 4 or 5 or 6 strength, you're getting a ton of cards, but that's a lot of negative points. But maybe the amount of points you can get and the cool effects you can get are going to save you. You don't know. I really like that concept in this game. You don't have to do it, but you could do it, and it's just a very unique element. The very first time that I did it, actually the very first game I played, I ended up losing badly anyways, but when I did that corruption for the first time, it was just, I pulled 6 cards, and I mean, it just turned my whole game around. Still ended up losing, but it was a lot of fun just to have that amount of power. So really love that element in the game. The rest of the game, as far as just putting out the set collections, again, the grasshopper mode in and of itself, it's just okay. It's very simple, and I probably wouldn't highly recommend this game if that's all there was to it. But then, assuming you play the Grandmaster mode, that's where the game really opens up. You have this little worker placement of putting the pawns out in different areas to access completely different cards that can help you out. The Shadows cards and the Imperial Court cards, which can give you very powerful effects. In particular, I like that if you have the lowest ranking, and therefore get only like 1 pawn at the end of a round, you also get to draw you have your choice of 2 of the Shadows cards, which are a great little catch-up mechanism. The other thing is that you have the Imperial Court cards, which is one of the optional things that you can do with your pawns, which by putting it there, you not only get victory points for the final end of the game, but those cards are really good. It can really save you. In fact, some of them are just, negate a negative effect, like getting one of your clans destroyed. That's huge. That's one of those things I'm talking about, how the game sort of mitigates that aspect of it. But what's really unique and cool, I think, is the whole concept of the boss monster and the decoys. This is the little bit of deduction that the game offers, where you can just put stuff down to get points on other spots, or you can just load up the boss card with a bunch of pawns, but you're not sure what that boss card is initially. It could be one of the bosses that does benefit from, you get a lot of points for having a lot of pawns on it, but it could be one where you don't need a lot of pawns on it, so you're just wasting them when you could be putting them in the other 2 spots to get 10 points each. Or there's at least one monster that hurts you for having too many of the pawns on there, but so you don't know, and one game is taken out, or one card is taken out. So you should try to make use of the mission spot so you can take a look at those decoy cards, and by process of elimination, figure out what it is. And that's actually, in our second game, when we played the full game, that's what saved me and ended up having me win the game, because I knew what was not, that boss card wasn't, and that I shouldn't invest too heavily in that card. But even then, if you find out what all the decoys are, remember there's still a card taken out, so it's a 50-50 shot, a little bit of mystery, but I think that adds some cool tension to the game. So I like that element. Now, I will say there's 2 faults with the full Grandmaster game. The first is the length. Now, just playing the game in Grasshopper mode, probably, I would say if you're very experienced with the game, 20 minutes. If you're not experienced with the game, it could be 40 to 45 minutes, and that's pretty much what it says on the box. So basically, you're multiplying that by 3, because you're doing 3 rounds of that, same exact Grasshopper mode, 3 rounds of it, plus the intermediary 2 or 3 times of going around putting out your pawns, which could take 10 minutes again. So you're looking at least an hour if you're really experienced with the game for the full game, but probably 90 minutes to 2 hours if you're not that experienced with it. Now, I don't have a problem with that. 2 hours for a board game, who cares? Most of us would scoff at that, but this is supposed to be a light card game. So some of the people that I played the full game with were not expecting that heavy of a game. And to be honest, the first time I did Grandmaster mode, I didn't expect it to be that heavy. So I kind of let them into thinking, oh yeah, this will be quick. We'll be done in less than an hour. But it wasn't. So that's something to be aware of. The other thing is that you could definitely make an argument that those extra little modes of worker placement and deduction are very tacked on to what is essentially a very simple set collection game. That's even simpler, I would say, than Lost Cities. So it does feel a little tacked on. And remember what I said, that the theme isn't super strong with this one. I never felt like I was compiling a group of clans to go and fight other clans or anything like that. It just felt like I was building sets of cards. So that extra board aspect does feel tacked on, but still, it's fun. It really is. So my final opinion of this is that I think this is a great game. I really do. I'm slightly concerned that the replayability will go down as I play it more, but for now, I'm really looking forward to playing it more. I really want to play it again and again. I see potential for a lot of expansions here, more boss cards, more clan cards, the yokai cards. I didn't even talk about them. The yokai cards are really cool, and that's another bit of strategic planning that you have to do. Should you put out just more clans? Should you use the powerful effect of a yokai monster, even though you weren't going to get as many points as playing out a full clan? I don't want to backtrack too much, but those are just really cool elements. I see room for expansion there as well. I think it's very fun. I encourage you to play the full mode to get the full flavor of the game, because the Grasshopper mode in and of itself is just okay, but the full game is really, really neat. I think this is another hit from Yellow as far as I'm concerned, and I hope a lot of people check it out. My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day in every way. Take care.